tribal women have been completely excluded from any development programs, any development activity, and their status continues to remain what it was probably 70, 65, 70 years ago.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today it is an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce you all to this very particular session where we are going to know more about the prospects and challenges in empowerment of tribal women. My name is Harsh and I'm going to moderate this session for all of you wherein I'm going to introduce you all about session and perhaps the person who is going to interact and address all of us. First of all, I request you all to kindly acknowledge and welcome the presence of our esteemed guest, and she is very dynamic, very interesting personality, none other than Dr. Sarika Kulkarni, who is here with us. I would like to request all the persons those who are watching this session on YouTube to kindly upload in the comment section and welcome the presence of our esteemed guest. Our guest, Dr. Sarika Kulkarni ma'am, is a founder director of RA Foundation, an NGO that supports nation building by addressing United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. She is also the founder of RA Creative Design. She was also the first CEO of IIFL Foundation. She has written 3 books in management, multiple articles, and research papers. She has won several awards and recognition and served on important national and international councils and think tanks. So, first of all, ma'am, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. Look forward to.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's our pleasure too. So, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen, is prospect and challenges in empowerment of tribal women. Women empowerment is the process of empowering women. Empowerment can be defined in many ways, however, when talking about women's empowerment, empowerment means accepting and including people who are on the outside of the decision making process into it. Women empowerment is the most crucial point to be noted for the overall development of a country. Ma'am, my first question to you is do you think enough has been done to help or support tribal women in our country?
So let me put it this way, I mean, tribals themselves are at the fringe. I mean, not much has been done, honestly, for tribal development. Although there are lots of schemes, there are lots of departments, there are separate departments who are supposed to just focus on tribal welfare. But not much has reached the tribals. And women are much, they are at further lower end of the overall ladder. So women have been completely, tribal women have been completely excluded from any development programs, any development activity, and their status continues to remain what it was probably 70, 65, 70 years ago. It has, in fact, I would say it has deteriorated over the last couple of years, since independence, probably because of development, because of development of the other regions, and not because of tribal development. Because of the lobe side development that we have experienced. Earlier, before independence, probably the men did not migrate, but now men have to migrate, and women actually have to take care of everything single-handedly. The trees have fallen down, forests have disappeared. So the tribals, which were actually the forest produce gatherers, they have to they had to shift professions, and no alternative professions are available locally. As a result, they have to migrate. So I think their situation has become much worse over the last couple of years. I mean, forget development. I would say probably they were better off 70 years ago.
Indeed, ma'am. I think it was a quite insightful awareness point which you have told, and I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, and the concerned authority need to work on this, need to check this. My next question to you is: what is the most stressful part about working at women's empowerment?
The worst part is actually is when you work with men. There are maybe step one, step two. Okay, this is a guy. These are the existing skill set. This is the income generation opportunity that we can create for that person. maybe this person is not is illiterate. Okay, then you can do some other labor work, you create some labor work for this guy. So creating men empowerment or creating income opportunities of men is fairly simple. But when it comes to women empowerment, we actually have to look at so many impediments to women empowerment and women development, which unfortunately is a very longish process. So creating income opportunities for women is not like, a 2 months job or a 3 months job. It is a long process. It's a tedious process which involves working on multiple social factors. Like for example, when we actually, the foundation, Ra Foundation, wanted to work on women empowerment, but we realized that water is a big impediment, health is another big impediment. So because women have to, they are water bearers of the family, so they spend hours fetching water. So obviously there is no question of any women empowerment activity to take place unless you have water available. Unless women spend very little time on fetching water, they will not have time for any other activity. So you first have to address water. Similarly, health is a big impediment because every third child is malnourished. Each woman has typically 4 to 5 children, 5 to 6 children also in many cases. Half of them will be malnourished. Half of them are constantly falling ill. Obviously, with a sick child at home, no woman can seek any income generation opportunity. So which means we have to work on health. So there are multiple layers of development which we have to figure out or which we have to address before we can actually go on to the core of the social problem that we want to address, which is create income opportunities for women and thereby empower women. So it's very, very complicated and very, very challenging, and involves a very deep rooted study, and involves a longish lot of patience, long years of work. So it's quite complicated.
Indeed, ma'am. I think it's very hard to disagree with you. Ma'am, my next question to you is what is the greatest transformation in social values or tradition you have witnessed in your life?
So I always say that our tribals, they are very culturally very, very rich. They have fabulous traditions, beliefs, dance forms, art forms, and migration destroys everything. So to create, to preserve this cultural heritage, rich cultural heritage of our country, it is very important that our tribals stay back in their own villages and practice their culture and practice their tradition. And honestly, what I have seen is that some of the villages which were 100%, they were migrating, because there was nothing there. And over last 6 years, after consistently doing work in the same villages, working on multiple social pillars, taking an integrated approach to social development, working on water, creating water positive villages, we actually have seen the culture return back to the villages. That has been a very heartwarming situation, because now people have stopped migrating across several villages. They continue to live in their own villages. They continue to practice their dance form. Women continue to enjoy that status that they used to have earlier, and they feel empowered. They feel very confident that yes, now probably we can confidently change the course of our life. And I think this going back to, we have taken them back 70 years, which otherwise, if I say that I have taken the process back 70 years, we would be very distressed, that which means, oh my god, you have taken development back. But in my case, I feel very happy because this is what cultural empowerment has led to, economic empowerment, and hence women empowerment. That is something which is very heartwarming for us.
And many reports, we have observed that many reports predicted or say that women, tribal women especially, when they face any kind of violence or they face any kind of injustice, they don't believe in approaching to the police. And what are the reasons and what can be done to make women believe that approaching the police for help is not a futile?
Yeah. So I think one of the reason is past experiences. They have not had very good past experiences. So the history is against, does not allow them to approach the cops or allow them to approach any government official, if I may say so. So because in the past they have not been taken seriously, people have not written down their complaints seriously. Many cases, tribals, they live in small hamlets which are spread across mountain regions. So some will live top of the mountain, some will live deep into the valleys, and typically the police station will be far away. So even reaching the police is very difficult for some of the women. So that's why probably multiple reasons why, like I said, mistrust is one of the biggest reason, and logistical challenges could be another reason. So these are the reasons why they don't approach the cops. And I think clearly it is very important that trust be built once again, back. And for that, creating women only police stations in the tribal areas. I mean, tribal women are very smart, they are very fit, they are very agile, they are very smart. So clearly, creating more job opportunities for young girls and women to join the police force from the tribal region, and then creating employing them in their own region could be a very, it will be a win-win situation, that the girls will get opportunities to work in the government, and then it will be easy for women, other women, to trust these tribal girls, because they'll be from among themselves. That is what I have seen, that they easily trust their own people, they mistrust outsiders. One of the reasons why our foundation has scaled up so big time in such a small period of time is because we have only employed tribals. Our entire staff, 100% of our staff is tribal. So that's why that trust building happened very fast.
Indeed, ma'am. Ma'am, my next question to you is what are the challenges of recovering the voices of women from the past?
Women from the
Past.
past, recovering their voices.
Yes.
Uh, so I think what we do is that when we go there, we actually, first 15 days I just go and talk. That's it, talk to them and listen to them. I talk less but listen more to them, because it is very important to unlayer or delayer the history, to start work, delayer the past in the present day, to actually create a future for them. I mean, unless you actually create a thread around the past, present, and future, the future projects or future prospects can never become sustainable. So I think what really makes a difference is that just listening to them, listening to what has happened in the past, listening to why they are where they are today, and what is their idea of the future, and how they want to move in the future, and then create a bottom up approach to your developmental projects. So that way you will listen to the past voices also, you will gather the wisdom also, which is the tribal local wisdom, which is amazing. Honestly, they all know what progress means for them, or what is their definition of progress, but they don't have a voice to talk about it. So giving them that voice, giving them that platform to voice their opinions, talk about their past, and then create a co-create a future, is something that is sustainable, that is achievable, and that then gives you a model which becomes replicable.
Indeed, ma'am. Again, it was a quite insightful answer from your side. I think it's a kind of privilege today we got to hear all those things from you. And I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, they are surely going to understand the real challenges and what are the real problems. Ma'am, my next question to you is what actually are if we talk about the Sustainable Development Goal 3, uh, in a tribal part of the countries, what is the real condition?
Uh, as I said, I mean, we were forced to take an integrated approach to tribal development simply because uh, social problems were so intertwined, and they were all social problems. I mean, if you look at, I mean, there was SDG 1, the SDG 2, SDG 3, SDG 4, SDG 5, SDG 6. Literally, I mean, we had to work on all the SDGs to actually create to build the nation, I mean, to build the tribal region and contribute to nation building, honestly. So it was like multiple approaches we had to take. There was no one single approach. So situation is not good. And I feel very sad because, these areas where we work are only 3 hours from Mumbai. By road, if you want to go there, it's only 3 hour distance. So it's so near yet so far. And that's how I want to describe it. I mean, since you asked me that, what is the social situation? It's so near yet so far.
Ma'am, in your opinion, what can be the best ways to empower these tribal women?
So, as I said, the first step will be to actually delayer all the social problems that the women are facing. That I mean, if they are not empowered, it is not because culturally they are weak. It is not because there is gender equality inequality in their own culture. That's not true. There is enormous gender equality in the tribal culture, but it is because of some outside problems that they are unempowered, or they are facing they are weak today. So it is clearly the first step will be to identify and delayer or unlayer all the social problems that are creating this situation. Like I said, in our case, water was a major issue which was creating a roadblock to women empowerment. Health was another issue which was creating a roadblock to women empowerment. So once we removed both these layers, once we created water positive villages, now and women water positive villages, as in the supply of water is always more than the demand of for water. So water is always available in these villages. So our water project Malhar, project Malhar, it's called. It works on water. So we build dams, we build wells, we build other water structures, rainwater harvesting structures, etc. And now women actually who were spending 5 to 6 hours fetching water can now actually finish the work of fetching water in 15 to 20 minutes. So they are saving 5-6 hours every single day. You know, Clearly they are empowered because now they have time to pursue their income livelihood opportunities. They can look after children better. I mean, I would say why? I mean, they can just look after themselves better. They can rest. They can take care of their own health better. I mean, they don't have to do anything else. So I think that is important, to remove the roadblocks which hamper or the obstacles which actually hamper the life of a woman.
Indeed, ma'am, it's an excellent initiative, and I think we all need to appreciate this. Is something we should all genuinely appreciate. Ma'am, my next question to you is: what is the actually real condition of this? We can say education and healthcare in this tribal places of the country. What is actually what they have? What actually it is shown in we can say all the televisions or on these video formats. Is it true or it is totally different from it?
Yeah. So there are schools, there are lots of schools, and I would like to put it this way. I mean, if you ask me about women education or women literacy, let me just start with that. Typically, above 40, most of the women are completely illiterate. Between 20 or between 25 and 40, I would say about 50 to 60% women are literate. And below that, below 25 or below 20, everybody is literate. So clearly that education is now everybody is getting literate. Everybody is going to schools. All the girls are going to schools. But again, the standard of education is poor, not because the teachers are bad. I mean, I have met some amazing teachers who are so dedicated, who really want to give their 100%, but the atmosphere is not good, as in the ambience, the school infrastructure is a problem. Then I mean, there'll be class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, but only 2 teachers. So clearly one teacher has to look after 2 classes. So however much the teacher wants to give back, there are lots of limitations that the teachers really operate in. So that is the problem number one. So as a result, the quality of education is definitely an issue. Attendance is good. Everybody nowadays is going to school. All girls are going to school. Everybody is going to school. So that is not a problem. But infrastructure is a problem. Digital education is a problem. During COVID times, we have had multiple issues because there's no digital education. There's no network, in fact, in many of the schools. As a result, children have forgotten to write their names also. In like almost 1.5 years now, 1 year now, we have completed without any schools in tribal areas. Small children don't even know. They have forgotten how to, pick a pencil. They have forgotten that. So all of these challenges. Healthcare again is an issue because the main taluka headquarter will have a cottage hospital. There'll be some nice, good, dedicated doctors. But as you go interior, there are problems. I mean, there are hardly anybody available, and still local crooks rule. You know, I like to call them crooks, while the villagers, for villagers, they are like, demi doctors or demigods. But yes, I mean, we still have maternal mortality rate is high, infant mortality rate is high. People are dying of snake bites because they are not getting, immediate care. People are dying for multiple reasons. The death rate is high. People are dying young. So I think on both the fronts, there's lots to be done.
Indeed, ma'am. Again, you have given a very detailed overview. Ma'am, again, I have to say that there is a lot more to learn from you. But moving to my last question of this session, I don't want to take you much time. Ma'am, what is the one piece of advice would you like to give to all the viewers who are watching this session? How they can contribute on their individuals level to make themselves or make this country a better place?
See, I always say that individual social responsibility is, I think, much more important than corporate social responsibility. Because if each one of us can behave responsibly, as in you don't even have to go to that tribal areas or go to any slum and start working. I mean, just behave responsibly. Consume less water, consume less electricity, contribute to mitigating climate change in your own small ways. Be a sphere of influence in your own circle. When if you see any woman being harassed, stop it. If Let the women and girls around you educate themselves, educate men to be nice to women. So I mean, in your own way you can actually contribute a lot. You really don't have to do anything spectacular or extraordinary to create a better world for you, for me, for everybody. So I think I very very strongly believe in individual social responsibility, or ISR. So if all of us create a strategy or a policy for individual social responsibility, that this is my policy of life, this is my strategy, and this is what I am going to do, it will make a huge difference.
Indeed, ma'am, it was really a very wonderful message from your side, and it was a very wonderful discussion with you on the topic. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining and giving your important time. Thank you, ma'am.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for talking about this very very important topic, which actually doesn't get covered at all in national discussions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's our pleasure too. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside, I'm alone